Three, two, one. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Here the Spirit, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We are here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening, back in our usual spot. And man, we enjoyed the bye week, but Florida State, Mike Norvell, and us are back at it to preview some football games moving forward for the latter half of the 2023 season after a big win on the road, which we were up there for in Death Valley. A good win for the Seminoles. Banged up squad, needed that bye week quite a bit. Also needed to go back and look at some film and some of the mistakes that they had throughout the first little bit of the season. But with me this evening is Austin Veazey, our lead basketball writer at NoleGameday.com, and down below is our editor-in-chief, D-Lou, Dustin Lewis. Gentlemen, did y'all have a good bye week? How are we feeling? Feeling better, Dustin?
Feeling a lot better. Like you said, it was nice to have a couple of days off. And I think, as you said as well, the bye week came at the perfect time for Florida State to go back to the drawing board a little bit, work on some things on both sides of the ball, and excited to see how they come out of this bye week now with some guys that needed some rest as well, getting that time off.
It was a good bye week, man. The Vikings were here in Charlotte, so I got to see my team play in person for the first time in a few years. So
get their first win, right?
Yeah, first win. It was ugly, but a first win's a first win. And
a first win is a first win.
Listen, man, we're here.
It's tough. Hey, I'm not. There's no trash talking over here. I don't have any Steelers gear on right now, so I am innocent at this point.
It was a tough weekend for you.
Yeah, it's not great, but that's the usual special of Mike Tomlin losing games that you're favored for and you should be beating. So that's just the usual. Wasn't in too much of a shock, actually. So that's where we're at. And my quarterbacks, we're going to throw my quarterback out there who has like a sprained knee. We're going to put him out there on Sunday and probably lose him for the rest of the season. So it's just everything's looking great. And we still have our offensive coordinator that's been somehow on this team that has no brain cells. So things are going great. It's good, though, to cover the Bucs down here. It's nice. They're, got a big win on the road facing New Orleans Saints, but it's been a pleasure covering them. Baker Mayfield, a whole new type of energy in that locker room, which was much needed after a pretty dead one last year. So it's been fun. I mean, it's been entertaining college football. Any games that y'all are watching closely throughout the weekend, it was a great slate to sit back and just relax.
Yeah, Florida, Kentucky. Obviously, watching Ray Davis go for 280 was pretty cool.
Yeah,
sweet baby Ray.
Sweet baby Ray.
It was
man.
Sweet, wasn't it? Man, they couldn't stop him. Florida had no chance. I love listening. It's entertainment, but their DC, Florida's DC, is hilarious to me. It's incredible.
LSU, Ole Miss. Obviously, got to keep tabs on the team you beat already. And Duke, Notre Dame. I think those are the three big ones.
Notre Dame getting that win and covering, doing its thing, won me a good amount of money that was bet on the slate. I had a 4-leg parlay, and that was what I was relying on at the very end. So shout out to Notre Dame getting that win. But
depending on what happens, that could impact Florida State's season. With Riley Leonard there going down on, the game's final play, depending on what his status is in a couple weeks, that looked like a pretty gruesome injury at the time. We'll see what comes out, but if he's not able to play when the Blue Devils come to Tallahassee later this month, that's a huge loss, to say the very least.
Yeah, hopefully he's okay. He's a really good player. And, Florida State could use some quality wins. And, if you beat Duke without Riley Leonard, I don't know how much that means to some people.
Yeah, no, I hate seeing injuries like that. And, with Duke, is projected to try to have a college game day at some point if they were able to do their thing. And then you've got, Florida State still, rolling at the moment. So it would have been a fun Doak Campbell Stadium atmosphere. I'm sure they always show up. The fan base does whenever college game day is in town. So, might have to wait until Cristobal brings the Miami Hurricanes down into Doak if they're able to survive and hold on to a decent record at least. But we'll have to look at their schedule the next couple of weeks and see some interesting tasks ahead for them. But yeah, a lot of entertaining things throughout the weekend. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the AP poll. We'll give our little thoughts in here. Florida State not moving. We'll talk some early college football playoff projections. Just looking far ahead at that. We got a little bit of recruiting to chat about. And then we got practice observations. Delu was there for Tuesday and Wednesday practices, so he'll give us his observations and what he sees. There's a lot of guys we're keeping a close eye on for maybe making their 2023 debut. So we'll discuss that, and then we'll jump into this Virginia Tech versus Florida State preview and give our score predictions at the end. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about a former FSU basketball player who just made big time money in the NBA, 100 million plus. Congratulations to Devin Vassell, but we'll be talking about that at the end of the episode. Get Austin's thoughts on that. And Delu said he still got his number, so I mean, I think you got to work something out here.
Hey, all I'm saying is, 1 million, that's not even 1% of 144 million. So actually, I think it was 146.
Yeah, 146.
So
I'm just would like you to get him on the podcast for us. I want to, give us, the platform for him to really express his feelings after getting that back, and also ask him how much friggin' money he's gonna use on, some fun things to go.
If he's got the same number that he did back in high school, I can give it a shot, but I've got a feeling he's probably changed that thing a couple of times over the years.
Yeah, maybe just a tad. But let's jump into the podcast before we get going. Everybody, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, just like our guy from Bucks Game Day, JC Allen's in the house, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. We would definitely appreciate it. It helps get out to more Florida State fans out there and helps us communicating. Also grab some topics or questions from you guys. So I appreciate everybody showing us some love throughout YouTube. Almost getting near 10,000 subscribers. I mean, all we're doing is just pushing little videos here and there, but you guys seem to like that, and we're showing a lot of consistency there. So we're going to try to keep it up, but appreciate all the YouTube love and also our live viewers as always. But let's get started, guys. Let's go over to the AP poll, which I had mentioned just a minute ago, but Florida State not moving there. They're going to stay put at number 5. I guess you could say you could go to the Georgia game, and I saw some arguments being made about Georgia's showing, and that, well, if they're doing that, why don't they drop kind of where Florida State had their performance up at Death Valley, got that win, but actually was dropping down, and maybe wasn't. So not a lot of fans happy about that. But thoughts, guys, on this top 5: Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Texas at 3, Ohio State 4, Florida State at 5, Penn State 6, Washington 7, and then Oregon at 8, USC 9, and Notre Dame at 10.
I don't think there's anything to be surprised about here. Like,
it's really right here. Yeah,
Georgia struggled on the road against Auburn, but at the same time, they've won back-to-back national championships, and basically at this point, until someone beats them, they're going to sit there in that number 1 spots. I mean, as far as this week, the main thing I was looking at, Florida State staying at number 5, but getting 4 first-place votes in the AP poll. So, I mean, it just shows that they're continuing to gain some respect nationally, even though it was a bye week.
Like I said last week, I don't really care.
Or every week? It's every week.
Yeah, every week. I don't care.
It sounds really like Mike Norvell.
It just doesn't matter this early in the season. Once we get into November, then it matters a little bit. As long as Florida State's taking care of their business, it's really not going to matter. Georgia finally has a big test this weekend against Kentucky, who we saw last week. Played pretty well. We'll see if they can bring the same energy to Athens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we obviously saw the performance on Boulder with Deion Sanders going against USC, and looks like it was gone at halftime, and then USC just did what they usually do, and they give up a lot of plays, a lot of yards, and a lot of points. And that's the USC defense that hasn't changed in a very long time in that tenure, and that's something Lincoln Riley's going to have to work on if they're going to try to have a chance going into this college football playoff. But Caleb Williams is a special dude, but it was interesting to see Deion Sanders and that team try to make a comeback there at the end as much as they could, though. You saw a lot of fight in that team, which I think it just shows, Deion's doing a good job in that locker room. You got to give him credit in that part. And this team didn't give up. They could have easily given up, and we've seen teams do that in the past, I should say. So just giving credit there to Deion and what he's done. And then we expected that to be a loss, but they battled.
It was a fun game. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that Colorado has performed better than probably anyone on this podcast and most people nationally were expecting through the first 5 games of the season. I mean, they've definitely surprised some people. And I mean, what's even crazy is just how many eyes are on Colorado. Saw today, I think it was ESPN put out the top 10 watch games this season, and Colorado's 5 of the top 8. So, I mean, that's just really impressive.
Super impressive. I mean, you're bringing in a lot of celebrities. You're getting in a lot of former greats, and on the football field or basketball, it seems like anywhere, rappers at that point, and you're bringing a lot of eyeballs to that stadium. You're selling out the season, so there's a lot of things. It's highly entertaining to watch and be around and cover, as we do for a lot of our former guys, and covering a few stories of Deion Sanders. So always keeping an eye on the program of where the alums are at. So I just thought that was a pretty entertaining game there on Saturday. Let's get out of the college football rankings and let's jump over to some college football playoff projections. Some projections here. Brett McMurphy, who's, it's very early in the season, worth noting, but still, Brett McMurphy, I think he does one of the best in college football of covering this, along with bowl projections and all of that. He was calling Florida State's bowl very early on last year in the Cheez-It Bowl to face off with Oklahoma. But here he's got Florida State facing Michigan as a 2-point favorite for the Wolverines in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And then actually Florida State winning that game against Harbaugh and Michigan, and facing Georgia and the national championship, which would be held on January 8th in Houston, Texas. What are y'all just overall thoughts as those big brands going at it and the playoffs, and also on the other side with Georgia facing Texas?
It would be fitting for Florida State to go back to the West Coast on the same year that we're talking about national championship anniversaries. Florida State did the same thing 10 years ago, went up to Pasadena in the Rose Bowl, won the final BCS national championship. I mean, that'd be a heck of a story to tell, especially as a journalist, but and especially going up against Michigan. And that was also the last time that Florida State had like a really big bowl game in that Orange Bowl back in 2016. And I think getting a shot at Georgia as well, potentially in the national championship. We've seen Mike Norvell and Kirby Smart really go at it on the recruiting trail over the last 6 months, year or so, battling in that Peach State for guys. And Norvell has won some of those battles. Be pretty cool to see Florida State and Georgia go at it between the lines too.
There's still a ton of work out, obviously, but you'll take being in the playoff right now. There's still 2 months of football to be played, but as Dustin said, to be playing against Michigan in the Rose Bowl would be a very, very exciting matchup.
Yeah.
I think honestly at this point I would be surprised if Georgia ended up making the playoffs, but like I said, way too early. We'll see what ends up happening the rest of the football season.
Okay. The Georgia take's interesting there. I'm gonna get our viewers up.
They gotta show us something. They
can't just rely on Brock Bowers. They just can't rely on him.
They have not played well. They've really struggled against South Carolina and Auburn, who are two meddling to lower tier SEC teams. Whenever they finally play someone that's realistically solid, who knows what might happen.
They've had some real struggles earlier in the season as they try to figure out having a new quarterback there. And I mean, same thing with the rest of the teams that are in the top 5 above Florida State. Their toughest stretches of the season are still ahead of them, while I think arguably Florida State's is behind them after taking care of business with LSU and Clemson in September.
For sure.
Yeah, here's the Georgia schedule to finish off their season, as they were made fun of during the off season about having a weaker one, but they're still going to be facing Georgia, like you said, VZ, this upcoming weekend. That will be at home though, but you got Vanderbilt, then of course you're facing off against Florida in their annual game. That's still being held in Jacksonville, right? That hasn't changed.
Yep, still in Jax.
Okay, but yeah, Florida, and then. I mean, we saw what happened there this last week, what Kentucky did right up their gut. But then you're facing Missouri, who's kind of been a little secretive, undefeated. Good team. And yeah, they showed signs last year as well. Ole Miss, who they had a wild one too. That was really fun. I forgot to mention that. That was a really entertaining game as well to watch there for Lane Kiffin. But they're going to face Ole Miss there in November. And then you go on the road to Tennessee, which that's going to be a rowdy Rocky Top and then of course you're facing Georgia Tech at the end of the season. So there's a few games that out of nowhere have kind of floated to where Georgia, they're going to be more interesting than we may have imagined in the preseason or offseason.
You're going to learn a lot about Missouri this weekend as they play LSU, Battle of the Tigers. If Missouri comes out on top of that one, you're going to be looking at top 15, top 12 Missouri team just out of nowhere. And also, did you see Kirby Smart's comment saying that every SEC team needs to be ranked? And then he easily got made fun of because of Vanderbilt. So it'd be pretty funny if Vanderbilt ended up beating them next week, but I don't think that's going to happen.
It's a really tough stretch to end the season for Georgia, and they weren't very impressive during that week schedule in September. And I don't know, you got to be worried about some of those stretches. They do get some of those teams at home, but going to Tennessee, we saw Vanderbilt beat Florida on the road last year. I don't know if they're going to be able to hang with Georgia.
Come on, man. You can't compare Florida to Georgia.
A little bit of a stretch. But...
Oh, God.
They've got construction workers on site.
Kentucky and Missouri, don't sleep on them. Lane Kiffin will have something to pull out of his bag.
Yeah.
And he's going to say something the week of the game, too, that's going to get Georgia unnecessarily riled up. So...
Y'all saw the security guard trying to block the people from getting on the field and everything, and pushing them down and pushing that chick to the dirt. I felt bad. That was messed up, but dang, was she flopping? Was it a flop, you think? That's just my question marks that I have. And, I don't know if it was a flop or not, but she went, it was a nice nudge, but then I think maybe she just lost her footing, but that was a bad fall. That was tough scenes to watch.
There's probably some adult beverages consumed by her at some point, so you never know.
Still don't understand the attempt here. We got 10,000 people getting on the field, but let's try and stop 3 or 4 of them. Jesus.
Yeah, and you already know that's going to happen too. So at that point, it's safer to actually help people get down and get onto the field than block it off, as we learned from last year when Florida State beat Florida at home, being down there on the field. All security, all cops, everybody knew that it was going to be a rush the field type of game. I don't know how they knew, but they just knew advanced. And man, coming down from how high that is in Doak, though, that's about 7, 8, probably like a 7-foot brick wall right there, Dustin. I would say when we're doing our shows down there, that's a tall one. So when you're jumping down right on that concrete as well, that hurts. I did see it.
You can snap an ankle.
Exactly. That's what I did see last year, sadly. But yeah, really fun college football weekend, and overall, just looking at some of these projections, there's all these kind of brand names would be, super fun, but got a long season ahead. But fun to look at. Let's jump into some recruiting duo. I know you don't have a visitor list really fully written out and everything yet, but just overall, expecting some visitors this upcoming weekend. And I know, Dustin, you talked to a few of the players after the Clemson game as well, getting their thoughts on what they saw in Death Valley. But just, I know we haven't had a recruiting kind of update in the last couple of weeks, so I thought we'd try to throw one in a little bit for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, got a little bit. Florida State will be hosting one official visitor this weekend. 4-star defensive end LJ McCray will take his official visit to Tallahassee to check out this game between Florida State and Virginia Tech. And obviously, he's someone that we've talked about on this podcast before, one of Florida State's top remaining uncommitted targets in that defensive end room. And, they're still trying to add some guys alongside D.D. Holmes. And, he's a big one for Florida State. And the Seminoles normally do a pretty good job on these official visits, especially with him being the lone guy on campus. There will be some unofficial guys throughout Saturday as well for the game. But, getting to dedicate so much attention to him, we'll see if Florida State's able to make a big move here. Florida, Georgia, Auburn, some of the other teams to think about in this recruitment right now. But, it looks like Florida State's probably going to get the final official visit before his decision. And, this is a chance to make a major impression before he does make that commitment. And then as far as Saturday, a ton of commitments and other prospects going to be in Tallahassee. We'll have a list up on the website later this week. But, we've already seen some guys like BJ Gibson, Camden Fryer, and some other commitments announced on Twitter that they'll be in Tallahassee, as well as some other prospects across the 2024 and 2025 classes. So, recruiting is going to be back in full swing this weekend as Florida State gears up for that second home game of the season. And, we're going to see a lot of talent come in these next couple of weeks with this 3-game homestand. And then got to remember that Miami game in November. That's going to be the really big landmark game as far as recruiting for Florida State this season.
I want to ask you, Dustin, did you see that thing today? I don't know if it's a report or something that they're trying to work on with the NCAA, trying to limit the photo shoots for recruits coming in and such like that. I don't know. What do you think about that? I don't know. You talk with a lot of these recruits, and we are always posting these photos, and a lot of teams put a lot of work into it for sure. And then you're also seeing a lot of head coaches get involved. And of course, Mike Norvell for some of your big time commits and recruits he's after. But, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing I saw on Twitter while at the Rays game earlier.
It's something that's under consideration. It's been proposed to the NCAA to make a change there. And I mean, I can see the positive and negative both ways. I'm sure that gets really old for college football recruiting staffs and having to have a professional photographer and graphic guys ready to go on, especially some of these huge weekends. Not only in the season, but also, you got to think this stuff starts in January for some of those junior days. I mean, you'll have 100, 200 kids piling in for one single day and going through the uniform try on and the photo shoots and
equipment
everything.
Team.
So, I mean, yeah, that's a ton of stress on those guys that goes, I mean, throughout that entire offseason and then into the season as well. So, I mean, that's really tough. But then on the flip side, I mean, it kind of sucks for the prospects as well. They are still going to be able to take photos in uniforms. It just won't be professional photos, I guess. So, like your mom or dad or whatever can still take photos of you on their phone, but definitely won't be the same. But at the same time, there's more important stuff than trying on uniforms, and that'll give them some more time to actually get to know the coaches, the campus, and the place that they're looking at to be a potential future.
It can't be easy, so at least that's something that I think is at least needs to be looked at and maybe limited. Maybe it's just a limit type of deal, and they meet in the middle there. But it ain't easy.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you kind of have to find something else to sell your program. You can't just rely on the glitz and the glamour. I mean, not to say anything negative about Oregon, but I mean, you think about how many jersey combinations they have. That's something that people think about, and they go on there and try everything on. Now you don't really have that. You got to find something else to really sell your school and set yourself apart from everybody else in your message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point as well. So, I'm sure there's a lot of different kind of creative ways to do that, and marketing is just skyrocketing, and how sports and brands and these programs do their thing to get their influence out there. So, definitely keep an eye on that and that storyline. I think for the rest of this, we're going to kind of start getting into some Virginia Tech talk. I want to jump into some practice observations first. D-Lou, there's some guys that we're going to be keeping an eye out on Saturday when Florida State kicks off against Virginia Tech at 3:30. There's a few that we have been pressing on that we'd like to see. We thought it would be a tough game for Florida State defensively for not having Akeem Dent out there. VZ, I saw you pressing for that, and you definitely could say that would have helped quite a bit in some areas to have Dent out there in the game. But there's a few more that we haven't even seen play at all this season, including Kentron Poitier. And then you've also looking at Ja'Kai Douglas, who we are expecting at least to probably suit up and play his first snap of the 2023 season. And then we're looking at Robert Scott as well, and watching and monitoring what he's going to be available for on Saturday. But just going off, how were the vibes, D-Lou, from the team? I heard, Mike Norvell talking, saying he really liked the energy from these practices, and Jared Verse and Jordan Travis having some solid couple days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I can echo. The energy has been up for Florida State coming out of the bye week. Looks like the team is ready to go, get back on the field against an actual opponent and continue the schedule. Like we said earlier in the podcast, I mean, this week off couldn't have come at a better time for this team to really hone in on a couple of aspects, running the ball on offense, getting things in sync on third down and in the defensive backfield on defense, and also getting some of these guys more opportunities, some time off to heal up as well. So, I mean, you're really just seeing the team come in with a burst of energy this week, and that led to a lot of competition across both sides of the ball. I mean, I thought Fentrell Cypress was absolutely terrific the past 2 days. Jordan Travis probably, from our eyes, getting to see 2 practices a week as far as a stretch Tuesday, Wednesday is probably the best 2-day stretch that we've seen from him since fall camp. I mean, he was really dialed in. Jared Verse today, Wednesday, was all over the place. I mean, there was one play where the ball was snapped. Jared was already there and tagged the quarterback. The coaches just waved their hand off and let the play go on because I mean it was just so quick. And you knew that Jared Verse was at practice today. He was very loud. But I mean it's been a good week for Florida State. Pretty encouraging to see, as they enter a stretch where they're not playing as high tier on paper competition as they were in September. So I mean these are some opponents that are kind of flying under the radar a little bit, but Florida State still has to take them seriously. And I mean Braden Fisk kind of talked about that, coming in from Western Michigan now to Florida State. He said whenever he was at his previous school and a team like the Seminoles was coming in, this was a showcase game for a team like Western Michigan. They want to go out there and put their all into it. This is a game where people can get noticed. And I mean, it kind of says that with Fisk going from there to now Florida State, he was able to put those flashes together, get noticed, and now move up to a higher level. So the Seminoles are going to get everyone's best shot. And we saw it against Boston College. They know what they're going to get from these teams, and, they look like they're prepared for it.
That's one thing that was have to be a big time mental switch up from last year to this year. And I think they had to learn just straight up in front of their face, and glad that happened early on. You were able to slip away with these wins. And definitely the Boston College game there where there was some overlooking for sure. And you thought things would just go smoothly and things were going to be easy, but you're going to face everybody now. And for the rest of the season, their best effort and their best plays, your best play call, best game plan. I was going to say discipline, but Boston College didn't show us that. But but for the rest of the games moving forward, that's going to be it. And it seems like you're facing the refs too in a lot of weeks. So at least from up there in Death Valley. So just overall, everything's against you. The world's against you. That's the kind of mentality that they need to have. And I'm glad Braden Fisk, as being a veteran there, he understands that. And that's hopefully that translates into the locker room more and gets into their bloodstream.
But you kind of alluded to it. Other than that, I mean, the big thing this week is injuries, and we heard Mike Norvell provide updates on Robert Scott, Akeem Dent, Kentron Poitier, and Ja'Kai Douglas. Getting a chance to watch them in practice this week, there is some confidence that all four of those guys are going to be back. I'd call them pretty much all game time decisions at the moment, other than Ja'Kai. I mean, it really looks like he's probably going to take his first snaps for Florida State on Saturday against Virginia Tech. And I mean, that would be kind of reflected by the depth chart we saw from the Seminoles that came out on Monday. It's the first time that we've seen Ja'Kai Douglas listed on the 2 deep, which makes it seem like he is going to be available. And then especially today, he had some flashes on Tuesday, but then came back with a very consistent day on Wednesday, had some connections with Jordan Travis, one for a touchdown in goal line one-on-ones, then came back and had a catch from Brock Glenn during 7-on-7 as well.
I think the bigger revelation from the injury news was him admitting that the team had been dealing with some illnesses the last couple of weeks, which was highly rumored but hadn't been confirmed until now. And, you could tell there was definitely some lethargic play out there against Boston College and Clemson. So hopefully guys are over and ready to go.
Yep, that's a big one, Austin, that I wanted to talk about as well. It was big for Mike Norvell to confirm that because Florida State, they did have 7 players missing from that 2 deep against Clemson, some guys that we had not seen suffer previous injuries in game. And we heard Mike Norvell specifically reference Deuce Spann missing the Clemson game due to illness. And I mean, I can attest to it. Our intern on staff, Robert, he's a student at Florida State. He was sick as well, so he can attest to it. And actually, Tommy has been out this week. So the NoleGameday team is getting hit with this sickness. I mean, basically as hard as Florida State.
Dude, it's rough. It's that always a couple weeks into classes there in Tallahassee, and definitely if you're there at practices and around the program as much as you guys are and I was at the time, you're going to get hit with something. And, usually it's a pretty tough week and a half stretch to get it out of your system. But it's just tally flu. That's all it is. And then,
go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, that's about it. Get away from the bars too. That's probably a good idea. Probably wouldn't help.
But we'll see if maybe the sicknesses that hit the team were part of the reason that they did underperform in the second half against Boston College, and also part of the reason for some of those struggles against Clemson. If they come out firing out of this bye week and dominate Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and Duke, can we really hold what happened in September against them? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I think if a lot of Florida State fans would love to be on that side, D-Lou, when they're in the stands there in Doak this upcoming weekend. Definitely want to have a whole different 180 from what we saw a few years back. But before we get into that preview, but yeah, I think just one last thing here. I just want to talk to Ja'Kai Douglas. I think too, Florida State needs someone in that slot position. It's been a big discussion from a lot of Florida State fans or some of my friends that I'll hang out with. And, we all agree, your offense can't be so reliant now just solely on Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. Yes, they're incredible freaks. Yes, you could probably beat Virginia Tech with them. You're able to do it against Death Valley and Clemson, but still, teams are going to plan better. DCs are going to do better, and they're going to do a better job forward on the film they've watched in the first 4 games. So they've got to figure out a way. And I think Ja'Kai Douglas coming in as a slot position, we saw success last year with him out there. And there's a lot of different things too, schematically, that Mike Norvell likes to run Ja'Kai Douglas with. So this is going to open up a little bit more of a wider range in your playbook. But excited to see hopefully him get out there number 0 on Saturday. He's due for a really solid debut, in my opinion.
I think he could have an underrated impact on the offense because Ja'Kai Douglas has been able to develop a chemistry with Jordan Travis over the years. We've seen them connect on big plays in the past. You think back to the Notre Dame game in 2021, the catch against Miami that same season to set up the game-winning touchdown by Jordan Travis. They've got a history of finding each other in big moments. And, we'll see if Ja'Kai coming off this injury, like I said, he's looked pretty shifty in practice this week and has gotten the best of a couple veteran defensive backs. I mean, he hasn't lost a step and doesn't look very rusty coming back from that preseason injury. I think having him in the slot and then obviously having Keon and Johnny on the outside, we'll see if Kentron's able to get in there. That could maybe help this passing attack begin to ramp back up.
Let's jump into a little bit of this preview now, guys. We'll be back in Doak on Saturday. Dustin will be there in attendance for us. I'm going to be enjoying this Bucks bye week up here or down here. But Florida State kicking off 3:30 against Virginia Tech on ABC. Florida State killing in the ratings right now, and they're making sure it's known there on their social media as well. But they're bringing in a lot of really good numbers at the moment, and a lot of eyes will be watched on this one, just going back to what happened when Florida State lost their season opener, which is not even funny. I shouldn't be saying. There's a few things that really still sit like in the corner of your head and the brain of you. And you're just like the Travis Hunter thing. And then this Virginia Tech blackout game and that clip of swag surf going on. It's brutal. It's brutal. So Florida State fans wanting to completely wipe away that memory, including a lot of the administration as well. But what are y'all's thoughts going into this one? Florida State facing against a 2-3 team and the ACC, their last win this past weekend, beating the Pittsburgh Panthers, who are 1-4 in the country. 1-4 in the country. 1-4 as a record. 1-4 in the country. They're ranked 14th in the country.
I think this could be a sneaky game for Florida State. We've seen this defense struggle with mobile quarterbacks, and especially in this one, you've got Kyron Drones coming in for Virginia Tech, who actually wasn't their starting quarterback to begin the year, took over after Grant Wells was injured earlier this season. There's not a ton of film out on him yet. He started the last 3 games for Virginia Tech and has improved in each of these 3 games. And, during that game against Pittsburgh, 12 out of 19, 229 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, also had 2 rushing touchdowns. So, 5 total touchdowns. He's about 6'2", 231, thick quarterback. And he's coming in with some confidence. That's something that you've really got to be watching for the Florida State defense. How are they going to rise to this challenge? We saw Jaden Daniels. They did a pretty good job overall, but there were a couple big plays. And then, it was an absolute mess against Thomas Castellanos. I don't know if anyone remembers that. I think he had a pretty good game on the ground against the Seminoles. I think Drones is more like Jaden Daniels as a runner rather than someone as shifty as Castellanos. That kid was extremely unique. But, as always, when you've got a mobile guy like this, it does present a challenge for the Seminoles and Adam Fuller.
Yeah, and Florida State's definitely struggled with running quarterbacks under Fuller. And like you're mentioning, Jones isn't quite what we saw against Castellanos. He's definitely more of your more physical type of a quarterback. He's going to be more of a guy that's going to run you over than instead of try to run around you. But he also made a couple big time throws last week. You could tell this offense has been missing Ollie Jennings since the first couple games, but they still have some capable playmakers on the outside. And if Jones carries that confidence from the Pittsburgh game, maybe they can make things interesting. I do like their running back too, and he had a pretty good game last week against Pitt as well. But it is Pitt, and it is Phil Jerkovich that we'll talk about when we start talking about Virginia Tech's defense. But they do have some pieces where you're like, okay, they've got a guy that's got 22 pressures. They've got a running quarterback. They have some of these pieces, and we were talking about it before we went live that this could be a little bit of a sneaky one for Florida State.
Sneaky. I'm not too feeling sneaky on it. I don't know if I'm just strange about it. I mean, it's Virginia Tech. I don't know. I mean, he could have a high after this last weekend. He won at home. He beat a bad Pittsburgh Panthers team. He lost to some bad teams before that. We'll see. We'll see who wants to end up. But I think what Florida State with Fuller needs to do is send things early on this kid. And then with drones, you really would love to have Akeem Dent back. Kevin Knowles has been sent on these blitzes so many times, and nothing's getting done. Nothing's getting done, and I don't know if Florida State can utilize someone else. But yeah, I'd like to see maybe even Azrae Thomas be in that situation. But at least with Kevin Knowles coming down, there just hasn't been a whole lot of success where there should be almost close to takeaways. If not, there should be some big 10+ yard sacks and tackle for losses from the safety that just moved and made that position change. I want to see better play from Knowles, and hopefully that was just a little bit of a not so great of a start to the season for him. But having Akeem Dent would be big. He just brings really good experience, and I think he's a good tackler as well. And he showed that in the early parts of the season as well, which really stinks.
It's not even that they've been sending Knowles and it hasn't been working. When they haven't been sending them, teams have just been running right at him. They're like, oh, Kevin Knowles is on the left side of the field. We're running our plays left. They've really got to get that figured out, and that's why more than anything, I'm hoping that Akeem Dent's back out there.
Yeah. I'm trying to think some things to what Florida State, at least, offensively, it's been written in here in the chat quite a bit so far this evening, but Florida State's got to find some better use and a passing game outside of your two primary guys. And, Jordan Travis not going for those deep shots. That's one thing that I think I would like to see some adjustment there from Tony Tokar's Florida State's quarterbacks coach, Mike Norvell, and Jay Travis. Seems like we're trying to go for the highlight play too much, where you could have a lot of opportunities on your check downs and some guys with some really serious abilities. I'm still not fully sold on Winston, right? He's not going to be in that West Virginia form, but I'll tell you what, a young rookie and first year wide receiver, Dustin Hill, I'd give him opportunities, man. And there's been times where he's been open to give you those opportunities. And I'd like to see Jay Trav dump it down and just take these little easy check downs when you're on that second down and 8 or something like that. Get to where you can get on the line and you can try to move something forward up the middle.
That's going to be big for Florida State to get an actual intermediate passing game going to kind of open things up, and then also find other targets across that receiving core. And I think also a big thing for this offense is just that rushing attack. I mean, you've got so many offensive linemen back from last season. You had some veterans come in through the transfer portal. Trey Benson's back. Lawrence Toafili's back. They both played a lot of football for Florida State. And Rodney Hill is, averaging over 5 yards per carry over 5 yards in his 19 carries on the season. But it's just not clicking, and it all starts there at the top with Trey Benson. Right now, Florida State down from last season, down 66.3 rushing yards per game on an offense that has really leaned on that rushing attack and is now ranking number 78 in the country going into week 6 when they were number 13 a season ago. And, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but Trey Benson's average yards per carry have fallen from 6.4 to 4.7. He's not breaking tackles at the near record rate that he was doing a season ago via those PFF numbers. Mm-hmm. Something's just not right there. Florida State hasn't been able to get it together. There were some spurts at time in practice this week, but I still have some concerns there if they're going to be able to get that rushing attack back on track Luckily, Virginia Tech, not the greatest rushing defense coming into this game. 107th in the country, allowing 177.6 yards on the grounds. I mean, you got to hope that they can get those holes open and have the running backs hitting it on Saturday. But I mean, that's been an area of concern for Florida State when it was something that they really leaned on a season ago. And like I said, it's just kind of confusing, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's wrong at the moment.
Yeah, and I know it's boring, and I know it's not sexy, but I'd love to see some long, methodical drives in this game. Drives that take up 5-6 minutes on the clock, that are 12 to 15 plays, because that's all we've seen from Florida State so far as the season, is that want to hit the big play and want to get the quick strike and just get on the board quickly. At some point, you got to start giving your defense a rest, and these long, methodical drives, I think, will help the team the rest of the season. Just show it on tape. Against Clemson, they only had, I think, one drive longer than 4 minutes. I want to see this offense sustain drives, not just hit the big play. And, part of that comes with the run game that Dustin was talking about, getting the blocking assignments corrected on counters, getting the sweeps corrected, Trey Benson and the running backs breaking those tackles and getting the 5 to 6 yards per play that they were hitting last year and haven't really been so far this year. So we'll see if they can do that against Virginia Tech. I know they've got a couple of talented players on defense, but there's no reason they can't do that this week.
Yeah, there's definitely not. I think it's good too. This is a big game for some answers on if Florida State has moved on from those things and if they fixed them, or this is going to be a lasting factor for a lot of these situations at their end. If it's going to be lasting, there's some questionable things, at least at Florida State, going into what we think that, we all predicted here on what kind of run that they're going to make. There's a lot more question marks than what I had maybe thought. But yeah, possession of game is something that they were really good at last year. And that's something that they need to work on, is getting their methodical drives going and taking their time as much as they can. But they haven't been able to, because they're relying on a lot of their big plays, and that's finding their success, but that's not going to work every week. That's just not going to happen. So that's a lot of work to be done. And, if Rodney Hill, if he keeps on finding success like that, and he's getting downfield and he's hitting the hole, and he's getting off the tackles, then there needs to be more 29 on the field.
Yeah.
It's fine. Trey Benson starter, that's what it is. We knew that going into the season, but if that's going to be the case, you just got to move. You got to figure out more reps for Rodney Hill. And he's been, to me, just watching games, anybody would say he's your best running back that's been playing so far in this 2023 season.
I think Rodney definitely deserves more of a look. And then you look at Kazea, his only carry this season.
We didn't see him at all against
a touchdown. Clemson. His only carry this season was against Southern Miss for a touchdown. That's it.
He's a home run hitter, man. He's a home run hitter. I don't.
When it's not working, I mean, you got to try something out.
Yep. And hungry guys too. Those are hungry guys on the depth chart there that want to get these opportunities. Highly touted recruit, Keziah Holmes went to Penn State. Wanted to see more playing time. He would try to take every advantage of the opportunity that's ahead of him. And seeing Rodney Hill, what he's been able to do, those two definitely are deserving to have more reps. If the one in front of you is not getting it done, and maybe that will be a wake up call. I don't know, but there's definitely some things that we will look to on Saturday to say, okay, can we fix this? Did we fix these 3 things? It's really just about 2 or 3 things, man. This team, going back to the second half of LSU, it's almost unstoppable. It's almost unstoppable when this team gets clicking, but we got to see if that's been erased, though, guys.
It is pretty crazy that we're, 4 weeks in, or 4 games in, and Florida State hasn't even played close to their best football. So if they can get these things figured out, if they can get these blocking assignments and this running game figured out, it's just going to open up so much more for the rest of this offense. And we've talked at length about getting people other than Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson involved in the passing game. I think the running game helps with that. It just opens so much more other things out for this offense. And, hopefully this team can find its A game, because as much as Florida State hasn't played their best football, nobody's played their best football yet. It's the most wide open year of college football we've seen in, a decade and a half. So there's opportunities there. They just got to make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. Anything else too that you're looking to watch on Saturday, specifically to you guys? Just going from the Clemson game, you get a bye week, and now you're going into this. I know a lot of people wanting, to see Jordan Travis too, kind of monitor him and see his health after having a banged up game against Clemson. And it just seems like a topic week by week right now. It just doesn't seem like Jay Travis at that 100% that we saw, last year, utilizing his legs quite a bit. And you could see him take, easy outs on the sideline and not continue to run downfield. There's just some certain things that you could definitely tell it's not the same J Trav, but to help that, you get the run game going where you're not having to rely on him so much to be in that pocket and take those shots at times. But that's something I'm going to keep an eye on for sure as we go into Saturday.
I think J Trav has looked, like I said, really good this week, and I feel pretty good about where he's at health wise coming into this game. Wouldn't surprise me to see him utilize those legs a little bit more against Virginia Tech. I'll be looking a little bit at the special teams in this game. Florida State, they've had Keon Coleman at that punt return spot, but haven't been able to get anything going there as far as explosive returns like we were kind of hoping in the preseason. As he replaced the reliable Micah Pittman at that spot, has been even less explosive than Pittman was a season ago on return. Same thing with the kick return unit. They just haven't been able to get a ton going there. And then on the flip side, Florida State's been very good as far as covering punts. Going into that game against Clemson, FSU actually had allowed -3 yards on the season as far as punt returns, but then Clemson actually ended up having 21 yards on 2 returns that game. So kind of dropped the average down a little bit. But Virginia Tech actually has wide receiver Tucker Holiday, one of the top punt returners in the country. He's averaging 18.6 yards per return, and that's something that Florida State and Alex Mastermano are going to need to be aware of going to that game on Saturday, because, that's another thing. Special teams can play a big role in a potential upset. Florida State's been extremely solid on those core special team units so far and can't afford to have any sort of a drop-off.
Yeah, he's a good returner, arguably one of the best in the ACC. And I think as much pride as Norvell takes in special teams, I think they're going to find a way to get him figured out. But also, hopefully, Florida State's not punting that much in this game. I'm really looking to see what this offensive line does against. There's some talent on this defensive line. We sort of mentioned Powell Ryland earlier. Has 22 pressures, 18 hurries. He's really getting after the quarterback so far this year. And then Fildarius Payne has 8 pressures, but he's also only played 84 total snaps. So his pressure rate's been insane when he's gotten the chance. There's definitely some talent on that front four for Virginia Tech, and maybe they can cause some havoc. So, but, like I just said, hopefully Florida State's offense isn't punting that much to where they make that dangerous returner a factor.
And Powell Ryland is actually transferring in from Florida, so he might have a little bit of extra motivation to play in this game. And especially, with Florida State dealing with those injuries up front, we'll see who's available for this one. That could play an impact there as well. I think it'd be huge for Seminoles to get Robert Scott back. And I'm a big believer you cannot send Darius Washington to the bench. I know you need a backup center if Maurice goes down, or if Robert Scott or one of the other tackles is injured again, he can flex out to that tackle spot. He can even play inside. He's a versatile chess piece, but there's no doubt in my mind that Darius Washington is one of the 5 best linemen on that unit. And he needs to be in the game.
I agree. He came in late for Jeremiah Byers against Clemson, and it made a big difference. I thought he ended up blocking much better on that outside edge, because so far Byers just hasn't been that good. He hasn't been the player we thought he'd be coming over from
UTEP.
I always get them and UTSA confused.
Same kind of colors.
He just hasn't been what we all thought he could be. So maybe we see some rotation there and guys move in and out. But I agree, Darius Washington needs to play.
He's struggled as far as Byers. Casey Roddick has struggled heavily at times. I really think Florida State, they got to go back to that core 4 that they had a year ago. If Robert Scott's good to go this weekend, or whenever he is good to go, Robert Scott, Maurice Smith, Dimitri, and Darius, and then plug one of those other guys in there. I think Keandre's been pretty good whenever Florida State's running the ball. That might be the guy to play, but those 4 guys were part of that unit last year when Florida State was absolutely killing teams on the ground. And, like I said before, eventually you need to change some things up, and that might be the combination that works. Those guys have a ton of chemistry together.
Yeah, is there even a chance that with those core four you put in Bless and Scott at the tackles, you move Washington to guard?
Good point.
Granted, Bless hasn't been great. He's arguably been the biggest liability in the run game. He's great in pass pro, but run blocking he's struggled. So I don't know. We'll see. They've definitely got a ton of combinations they can use with that offensive front. They just really got to figure out what it's going to be going forward.
For some reason, my brain blinked out Bless, but yeah, he could probably be that fifth guy.
Didn't we talk about a little bit of that? Was that last week or our instant reaction to Clemson saying that, we'll probably look at this Virginia Tech game and there might probably be a whole different kind of combination that we saw different from the first week. And that's a good thing about it. You build depth, you've got experience. So if you want to swap out what you had last year, put those guys back at front line, and then at least you've got some experience there as depth pieces. But I think they've got to definitely work on that with Atkins and figure out what's going to be their best move, or their best group moving forward. And if it's going to help this run game, they need everything to do with that. So they need to go full force on that. Let's jump into some score predictions, because at the end we still got to talk some Devin Vassell getting his bag. But gentlemen, I think I went first last weekend, and right now the team still stays undefeated. We're all holding together. We're holding hands here. It'll be a little bit of an easier October, nicely.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah, I better hope I didn't jinx it. But yeah, who goes? I guess it's you, VZ, because you're usually up here with me at the top.
I'll go. I think the spread opened at 25. Correct me if I'm wrong. Florida State favored by 25. It's been very, for Virginia Tech, if they're winning, they're scoring 35. If they're losing, they're scoring 17. I don't know what exactly it's been with their schedule, because they've played so many different variations of teams.
25 and
a
half. Sorry.
25 and a half. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech gets a sneaky cover late, but Florida State still runs away with it. I've got Florida State winning 41-20.
Okay, I like that one. I think that's nice. I like that.
We are holding hands.
That's a shaking his head like I took the score.
He did take the score.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's happened so many times this season. It's only been 5 games.
Like I said, I like how Florida State has come out of the bye week with some real energy and enthusiasm. This team looks excited to get back to the final 2/3 of its schedule and, really just attack and continue to prove people wrong this regular season. I think the week off was huge as far as getting some guys back to full health or close to it for this next stretch. And I'm also going to be going Florida State 41-20. I think the rushing game gets clicking a little bit this week, but we also see Ja'Kai Douglas make a splash in his first game back for the Seminoles on offense. And also Jared Verse gets his first sack of the season, and maybe another one.
Oh, wait. Come on. You got to say 1 or 2. What are you thinking here? 1.5? Or 2 full solos, dolos? Versus back.
2.
Oh, wow. I will say there's a chance Florida State just absolutely blows this game out of the water and puts up 50, 55 if they show what they showed in the first 2 games. But after what we've seen the last 2 games, I'm kind of just playing it cautious, and I want to see it again.
You're just like craving it. Like, come on, let's just make it an easy night, able to get the recap out quickly. No kind of stressful things going into the second half, third quarter.
It shouldn't have to be like the Clemson game where whoever does the recap this week is basically just doing play-by-play at the end of the game, because that's what it came down to.
Yeah, that was extremely stressful.
Well, it's funny, man. You're doing it.
Am I?
No.
That's news to me. I was going to say. I can't.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over. I'm going to go Florida State 44 and then Virginia Tech 20. I'm going to do that just to be an annoyance, because I think Florida State's going to secure this. Like at halftime, Florida State's going to feel good at least. But I just wanted to toy around a little bit for this week it was a stressful September. Let me mess around a little bit in October, but I hope this does not come back and bite me in the ass. And like we just said, are having a game in the fourth quarter. But I like Florida State at home. Nice 3:30 game. Should be some nice weather up. D-Lou is starting to get like some cooler South Georgia, North Florida, little breezes there. You kind of smell it in that air, a little crispiness.
I don't know if I smell it, but it's been nice the last 2 mornings outside of the Canadian wildfire smoke or whatever in the
tough.
area. But it's been a pretty nice couple of days. It's looking like it's going to be a nice afternoon on Saturday in a sold-out Doak Campbell Stadium for the first time this season.
That's right. Sold out, man. That's going to be a fun one there for a lot of FSU fans being able to tailgate and everything after a really highly entertaining and a little stressful here and there September. But looking forward to, I know a lot of FSU fans getting out there in Doak, and it should be a good time and a fun one to cover for you guys. And I'll be live tweeting from here, so I guess I'll be covering as well, but not the same as being there and being behind the glass up there at the very top of Doak and being able to check out all the fans going at it. But real quick, though, before we get off of here, we need to talk about Devin Vassell, former FSU star, basketball player, guard man, now having a big bag, big bag, 5-year contract with the Spurs, $146 million VZ. Shout out to Vassell. If I'm at FSU basketball right now, I'm making a graphic every other hour on that. Huge for
as they should. As they should. Shout out my guy Devo. Who would have thought when he signed as the lone recruit in his recruiting class, which was 2018, unheralded 3-star Florida State was his only halfway decent offer.
Wow.
CY found him another one. 2 years later, he's in the league, and 3 years after getting drafted, he's signing a major contract with San Antonio. 146 M's. Shout out Devo, man. He's become a really good player. You know, if you take where he was as a rookie to where he is now, 18.5 points per game on good efficiency, shooting the 3-ball well at almost 39% on high volume. He's a very good NBA player, and he's a very in-demand NBA player. He's got a skill set that's just, there's not enough of it these days. So shout out Devo, man. Super happy for him.
And he's also done, an amazing job of continuing to fill out his frame, because I just remember how lanky he was coming out of high school. And he was still pretty small at Florida State. And I saw the picture of him at Media Day from earlier this week. And I was like, man, he's really grown up over the last couple of years. And he's going to be a huge building block for the Spurs as they move forward into this next era.
Yeah, I'm sure I've told the story a couple times on this podcast, but I remember his first pickup game on campus at Florida State. He's wearing Charlotte Hornets shorts and a white Nike t-shirt, and he couldn't have weighed more than 150 pounds. And he's just out there giving people buckets. And, Dwayne Bacon had come back to get some runs in. Obviously Trent Forrest is there and Brian Angola is there. I'm like, man, we're going to have to play this guy. We're going to have to play him at some point. And he made an impact late in his freshman season. I tweeted a couple videos when he signed his contract of the putback dunk against Notre Dame. And then obviously the big 3 to force overtime against Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament. He became a very good player very quickly, and I'm super happy for him.
Super fun to watch too. And those threes and during his time at Florida State was really fun. Like you said, put on some size there, D-Lou. You can definitely tell the creatine's hitting, the smoothies are working. That's weight. That's full on weight.
It's got to be nice to just focus on basketball and not worry about school alongside it.
And I'm sure Pop probably called him a scrawny kid a couple times when he first got there.
And the salary, not too bad.
Would that have changed for you, Dustin, in college? If you didn't have to do academics, you would be ripped out of your mind?
If I had a personalized nutritionist, I have faith that I would, be a little better looking.
Whoa, who said you weren't good looking? Who said you weren't good looking?
Not too much, but maybe like a 12%, 15% increase.
10 or 15%.
I think that's generous.
The biggest thing is just the Whataburger. Like if they would have to wipe the Whataburgers out of Tallahassee though for that to really get done.
If they slash my tires, then.
Oh man, but yeah, man. Shout out to Devin Vassell. D-Lou, you've got the contact. We might as well just shoot a text.
So do I. I was.
You know what? Let's call him right now.
Yeah. It's like you FaceTime and you're like, oh shit. Congrats on the 150 mil. Let me get a quick, couple of quotes here from you. Vassell, you're in front of a couple thousand listeners and viewers, and he's enjoying
maybe
it.
We could get him on. You never know. I might shoot him a quick text at some point. Like, hey man, come on the pod.
we still got to have our link up again, our couple yearly update from Terrence Mann. We got to grab him. Now he's on the NBA fame, but I feel like that one's still doable, though. I think he is. He's in our intro as well. That's definitely got to bring him in. Pull there, right? Oh no. Are y'all using y'all's phone to text him? Like, are we gonna get an update?
Maybe not right now. We'll see. He's a busy man. He just got done with media day. He just signed a massive contract. He's got to celebrate a little bit.
That's why we need him back on. Need to be like, hey, donate.
Donate to the stream. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now you're getting greedy. I just want to have him on.
You do need to shout out 813 for the donation earlier.
That's right. Yeah. Dropped always coming in here, man. Showing us some love. Also a big time guy, most active, one of our most actives in the Discord, dropping a 20 bomb earlier here on our YouTube stream. But shout out to 813 always. We are back in form. Florida State back on the field on Saturday. We'll have an instant reaction after the game. Dealey will be on hand for that. Or is Tommy going to be there?
Yeah.
Why do you sound unsure about it?
There and Robert up there in the press box?
Like I said, Tommy's dealing with a sickness, so as long as he's good to go by Saturday, he'll be there. We'll also have Robert, our intern, in attendance. So the full crew, our intern, and the full crew outside of Logan should be a good one.
And me.
Whoa, live tweeting. And easier there for the instant reaction.
You never come to games, though. I don't really.
I was just at the Clemson game.
Yeah, I mean, that was a rare occurrence.
He'll never come back down to Doak, though, after that spring game. He's never come back to watch you eat those glizzies, D-Lou.
We were killing him in the Discord, in our NG or the Game Day Discord earlier for gobbling glizzies at the spring game in 21. He wasn't accepting it at first, and then finally, I'm like, no, he was down in him.
Like I said, a free wiener is a free wiener. Also, KJ Bolden just tweeted that he'll be at the game on Saturday.
Nice.
There you go. There we go. Some live breaking news here on Hear the Spirit as we wrap up this episode. Appreciate everybody coming on here as always. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit the like button before you bounce out of here and hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time we release a new video or shorts or interview from Mike Norvell or players. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube so you get updated over there. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, Twitter, whatever it is, X now. Falling apart slowly in front of our eyes. Very sad to see. We'll hopefully have a new app in 2024, but it's struggling at the moment. But if Twitter falls apart, then make sure you're in our Discord. I think that's going to be the next app to make its big jump. But we're over there in our server. Hit the link in our YouTube description. Free to join and very active, definitely throughout college football season and entertaining. So hope everybody has a great weekend. Safe travels over to Tallahassee if you are doing so. And we will talk to you guys in our instant reaction on Saturday after Florida State faces the Hokies at 3:30 primetime afternoon, ABC. Everybody have a great weekend. See ya.